Everyone thinks Copilot Memory is just Microsoft's sneaky way of spying on you. Wrong. If it was secretly snooping, you wouldn't see that little memory updated badge every time you give it an instruction. The reality, memory stores facts only when there's clear intent, like when you ask it to remember your tone preference or a project label. And yes, you can review or delete those entries at will. The real privacy risk isn't hidden recording, it's assuming the tool logs everything automatically. Spoiler, it doesn't. Subscribe now. This feed hands you Microsoft clarity on schedule, unlike your inbox. And here's the payoff. We'll unpack what memory actually keeps, how you can check it, and how admins can control it. Because before comparing it with Recall's screenshots, you need to understand what this memory even is and what it isn't. What memory actually is and isn't. People love to assume Copilot Memory is some all-seeing diary logging every keystroke, private thought, and petty lunch choice. Wrong. That paranoid fantasy belongs in a pulp spy novel, not Microsoft 365. Memory doesn't run in the background collecting everything. It only persists when you create a clear intent to remember, through an explicit instruction or a clearly signaled preference. Think less surveillance system, more notepad you have to hand to your assistant with the words, write this down. If you don't, nothing sticks. So what does intent to remember actually look like? 2 simple moves. First, you add a memory by spelling it out. Remember, I prefer my summaries under 100 words. Then remember that I like gardening examples. And remember, I favor bullet points in my slide decks. When you do that, Copilot logs it and flashes the little memory updated badge on screen. No guessing, no mind reading. Second, you manage those memories anytime. You can ask it directly, but what do you know about me? And it will summarize current entries. And if you want to delete one thing, you literally tell it, forget that I like gardening. Or if you tire of the whole concept, you toggle memory off in your settings. That's all. Add memories manually. Check them through a single question. Edit or delete with a single instruction. Control rests with you. Compare that with actual background data collection where you have no idea what's being siphoned and no clear way to hit the brakes. Now, before the tinfoil hats spin, one clarification. Microsoft deliberately designed limits on what Copilot will remember. It ignores sensitive categories, age, ethnicity, health conditions, political views, sexual orientation. Even if you try to force feed it such details, it won't personalize around them. So no, it's not quietly sketching your voter profile or medical chart. The system is built to filter out those lanes entirely. Here's another vital distinction. Memory doesn't behave like a sponge soaking up every spilled word. Ordinary conversation prompts, write code for a clustering algorithm, do not get remembered. But if you say, always assume I prefer Python for analysis, that's a declared intent and it sticks. Memory stores the self-declared, not the incidental. That's why calling it a profile is misleading. Microsoft isn't building it behind your back. You're constructing it one brick at a time through what you choose to share. A cleaner analogy than all the spy novels, it's a digital sticky note you tape where Copilot can see it. Those notes stay pinned across Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint until you pull them off. Copilot never adds its own hidden notes behind your monitor. It only reads the ones you've taped up yourself. And when you add another, it politely announces it with that memory updated badge. That's not decoration, it's a required signal that something has changed. And yes, despite these guardrails, people still insist on confusing memory with some kind of background archive. Probably because in tech, memory triggers the same fear circuits as cookies. Something smuggled in quietly, something you assume is building an invisible portrait. But here, silence equals forgetting. No declaration, no persistence. It's arguably less invasive than most websites tracking you automatically. The only real danger is conceptual, mixing up memory with the entirely different feature called recall. Memory is curated and intentional. Recall is automated and constant. One is like asking a colleague to jot down a note you hand them. The other is like that same colleague snapping pictures of your entire desk every minute. And understanding that gap is what actually matters, because if you're worried about the feeling of being watched, the next feature is the culprit, not this one. Recall, the automatic screenshot hoarder. Recall by design behaves in a way that unsettles people. It captures your screen activity automatically, as if your computer suddenly decided it was a compulsive archivist. Not a polite, shall I remember this? Prompt, just silent, steady collection. This isn't optional flair for every Windows machine either. Recall is exclusive to Copilot Plus PCs, and it builds its archive by taking regular encrypted snapshots of what's on your display. Those snapshots live locally locked away with encryption, but the method itself, screens captured without you authorizing each one, feels alien compared to the explicit control you get with memory. And yes, the engineers will happily remind you encryption, local storage, private by design. True, but reassurance doesn't erase the mental image, your PC clicking away like a camera you never picked up, harvesting slices of your workflow into a time-stamped album. Comfort doesn't automatically come bundled with accuracy. Even if no one else sees it, you can't quite shake the sense that your machine is quietly following you around, documenting everything from emails half-drafted to images opened for a split second. Picture your desk for a moment. You lay down a contract, scribble some notes, sip your coffee. Imagine someone walking past at intervals, no announcement, no permission requested, snapping a photo of whatever happens to be there. They file each picture chronologically in a cabinet nobody else touches. Secure? Yes. Harmless? Not exactly. The sheer fact those photos exist induces the unease. That's recall in a nutshell. Local storage, encrypted but recorded constantly without waiting for you to decide. Now scale that desk up to an enterprise floor plan and you can see where administrators start sweating. Screens include payroll spreadsheets, unreleased financial figures, confidential medical documents, sensitive legal drafts. Those fragments, once locked inside Recall's encrypted album, still count as captured material. Governance officers now face a fresh headache. Instead of just managing documents and chat logs, they need to consider that an employee's PC is stockpiling screenshots. And unlike memory, this isn't carefully curated user instruction, it's automatic data collection. That distinction forces enterprises to weigh recall separately during compliance and risk assessments. Pretending recall is just another note-taking feature is a shortcut to compliance failure. Of course, Microsoft emphasizes the design choices to mitigate this. The data never leaves the device by default. There is no cloud sync, no hidden server cache. IT tools exist to set policies, audits, and retention limits. On paper, the architecture is solid. In practice, employees don't like seeing the phrase, "Your PC takes screenshots all day." The human reaction can't be engineered away with a bullet point about encryption. And that's the real divide. Technically defensible, psychologically unnerving. Compare that to memory's model. With memory, you consciously deposit knowledge, remember my preferred format, or remember I like concise text. Nothing written down, nothing stored. With recall, the archivist doesn't wait. It snaps a record of your Excel workbook, even if you only glanced at it. The fundamental difference isn't encryption or storage, it's the consent model. One empowers you to curate, the other defaults to indiscriminate archiving unless explicitly governed. The psychological weight shouldn't be underestimated. People tolerate a sticky note they wrote themselves. They bristle when they learn an assistant has been recording each glance, however privately secured. That discrepancy explains why recall sparks so much doubt despite the technical safeguards. Memory feels intentional. Recall feels ghostly, like a shadow presence stockpiling your day into a chronological museum exhibit. And this is where the confusion intensifies because not every feature in this Copilot ecosystem behaves like recall or memory. Some aren't built to retain at all. They're temporary lenses, disposable once the session ends. Which brings us to the one that people consistently mislabel, Vision. Vision, the real-time Mirage. Vision isn't about hoarding, logging, or filing anything away. It's the feature built specifically to vanish the moment you stop using it. Unlike Recall's endless snapshots or memory's curated facts, Vision is engineered as a real-time interpreter, available only when you summon it, gone the instant you walk away. It doesn't keep a secret library of screenshots waiting to betray you later. Its design is session-only, initiated by you when you click the little glasses icon, and when that session closes, images and context are erased. One clarification though, while Vision doesn't retain photos or video, the text transcript of your interaction can remain in your chat history, something you control and can delete at any time. So what actually happens when you engage Vision? You point your screen or camera at something, an open document, a messy slide, even a live feed from your phone. Vision analyzes the input in real time and returns context or suggestions right there in the chat. That's it. No covert recording, no uploading to hidden servers. The images and audio vanish after the session ends, leaving only the text conversation behind. Think of it less like an endless chain of CCTV cameras and more like one of those conference interpreters who only assists while the meeting is happening. They whisper to you in real time, useful, precise, immediate. But afterwards, they don't produce a diary of the meeting's every word. The only trace might be the official meeting notes you requested, which in Vision's case is the text stored in chat history and deletable on your command. The ridiculous misunderstanding comes from people who hear the word camera and immediately imagine they're cast in a surveillance thriller. No, Vision isn't stockpiling images in some distant Microsoft vault. Microsoft makes the opposite point unmistakable. Vision processes context locally, deletes visuals when the session ends, and only your text exchanges continue on. If that boundary sounds obvious to you, congratulations, you're operating one level above the average user who still panics at the mention of system permissions. It's worth stressing how opt-in this whole construct is. Vision doesn't lurk in the background waiting for your screen to light up before secretly recording. It only activates inside a defined session when you click the glasses icon in the Copilot Composer or explicitly allow it in Edge or Windows settings. Close the window, toggle it off, or simply lapse into inactivity and the session terminates automatically. To restart Vision, you must manually initiate it again. This is not always on. It's opt-in by design. Revisit the interpreter analogy with this nuance in mind. Imagine asking a translator to attend a meeting. They step in when you start, they leave when you end. During the session, they help you understand what's being discussed. Live translation, no memorization. But maybe the moderator also writes a brief summary of the exchange in the meeting notes. That's what Vision does. Images and audio vanish, but a text transcript might stay around until you choose to delete it. If you want no record whatsoever, you remove the notes, the chat history, and it's as if the session never happened at all. Now compare that with memory's persistence and recall's archiving. Vision doesn't build profiles, doesn't accumulate screenshots, doesn't create compliance headaches. It's transient muscle, powerful in the exact moment it's needed, useless and gone right after. Even the one fragment that remains, the chat transcript, is easy to erase, unlike recall's cabinet of snapshots or memory's preference entries. There are no hidden galleries, no secret indexes silently following you. Vision is designed for ephemerality, and that makes it an entirely different class of feature. This is where nuance matters. Saying Vision is the least capable of spying is too generous a simplification. More accurately, Vision is engineered to be ephemeral when it comes to images and audio, but the text transcript may persist unless you delete it yourself. That's not surveillance, it's traceable conversation history under your control. If you're looking for compliance nightmares, Vision doesn't even make the shortlist. And this practical distinction is why Vision shouldn't cause enterprises sleepless nights. Sensitivity lives in persistent data, documents, timelines, records. Vision skips all of those. What you get instead is a disposable opt-in feature that lets workers analyze, demo, brainstorm, and move on without leaving behind a digital minefield. Yes, you may need to remind people that transcripts exist, but that's a simple user habit, not a governance overhaul. Vision is the ghost that lingers only long enough to be useful. Understanding those differences is critical because when you shift back to memory, the picture changes. Memory doesn't vanish when you close a session. It introduces visible controls, signals, toggles, mechanisms you and administrators must deliberately manage. And that management is the point because privacy here isn't left to blind trust. The Privacy Power User Toolkit. Enter the Privacy Power User Toolkit, the set of levers Microsoft built so no one mistakes Copilot Memory for a background keylogger. These are the actual controls, the ones you should be using, and yes, they are sitting exactly where you would expect if you bothered to look. Step 1, the on-off switch. In Copilot, go to Settings, then Account, then Privacy, then Personalization and Memory. Say it slowly if you must. Settings, Account, Privacy, Personalization, and Memory. That's the master toggle. Until you flip it on, Copilot is basically running with short-term amnesia. Flip it on and suddenly it can remember facts you feed it intentionally. No half shadows, either disabled or explicitly active. Now suppose you actually enable it. Microsoft knew that average users tremble at invisible change, so they added a hyper-obvious signal, the memory updated badge. Every time you teach Copilot something new, that little tag pops up like a bureaucrat interrupting your day, noted and filed. You can ignore it, but you cannot claim you weren't told. But here's where practical control enters the picture. You're not expected to guess what's stored. Just ask, what do you know about me? Copilot will recite its current memory like a personal assistant rattling off your standing orders. Don't like one of them? Tell it directly. Forget that I like bullet points, or forget the gardening examples. But want to empty the entire drawer? Order a full wipe and it forgets everything in one go. Average software hides. This one literally takes dictation from you. And for the skeptics obsessing about training data, yes, you can opt out. Flip a switch and your conversations won't get used for model training even while your personal memory still works. That's the obvious paranoia valve answered directly. Your preferences personalize your Copilot. They don't automatically improve the global model unless you choose to contribute. Crisis averted. The toolkit doesn't stop with the user. Administrators get a much bigger hammer. They can disable memory across an entire tenant or just for certain groups. More importantly, every memory action, creation, update, deletion, is discoverable through Microsoft Purview eDiscovery. Translation governance teams don't have to squint at half promises. They get audit trails, receipts, and oversight. Compliance officers rejoice. Average employees groan. And as always, governance wins the argument. The analogy is easiest if you compare it to browser cookies, except these are cookies you name, place, and can smash whenever you like. They don't spawn quietly in the background. They don't follow you to other sites. If you grow tired of them, you hit forget and the jar empties. Microsoft didn't sneak in surveillance here. They copied structured compliance playbooks and dropped them into personalization. So what actually comes included? A toggle buried in an obvious menu, a badge announcing every addition, commands for surgical deletion or full reset, administrative power tools for tenant-wide disablement, integration with audit trails so auditors know exactly who remembered or forgot what. And that separate model training opt-out for the nervous. That combination isn't ornamental, it's operational. If you don't engage with it, you're basically leaving the hammer on the table and then whining about nails. The real question isn't whether these controls exist. They clearly do. The question is whether you'll treat memory as a fussed-over settings panel or as a baseline mechanism that can actually accelerate your work. Because once you strip away the paranoia, what's left is a tool designed to stop you from spending your life repeating yourself. And that's where the real story begins, Aizan. Why memory matters more than you think. Memory is not about vigilance or paranoia. It's about refusing to live in a loop, feeding the same instructions to an assistant that politely acknowledges them and then promptly discards them. Without it, every session resets to 0. Keep it under 200 words. Use bullet points, formal closing. Day after day, it's professional déjà vu performed at keyboard speed. That's not productivity, that's assisted futility. Now extend that futility across an organization. Analysts retype formatting directions into Excel. Project managers specify the same naming conventions in Teams. Designers remind Copilot how to lay out slides. Individually, this is repetitive annoyance. At scale, it is hours hemorrhaged in slow, invisible increments. People call this minor inconvenience. I call it institutional inefficiency. Convenient shorthand would be death by redundant clicks. The contrast is almost insulting in its simplicity. Imagine that forgetful colleague finally learned to write things down. They don't have new intelligence, but at last they stop discarding information like confetti. Tell them once it sticks and efficiency returns. That's the transition Copilot makes when memory is switched on. From digital goldfish to dependable note-taker, without needing to rewrite its brain, just by letting it remember. At this point, the skeptics raise their hand. So it remembers your formatting preferences. Who cares? The answer: scale cares. The individual saves minutes. Multiply across departments, and those minutes accumulate into something executives actually recognize: productivity. A formatting preference in Word, a naming convention in SharePoint, an email style in Outlook. Small personal tweaks repeated across hundreds of workflows become measurable gains. Productivity isn't found in heroics, it's accumulated convenience serving as leverage. And occasionally, memory doesn't just save time, it changes output quality. One real-world case involved a user who asked Copilot for PowerShell help. Because their memory already stored work tied to the Microsoft Graph, Copilot proactively referenced the Graph PowerShell SDK in its answer. That's not a parlor trick, it's relevance created by stored context. A preference remembered equaled a better technical response. Connect those dots and ROI stops being a buzzword and becomes actual observable improvement. Microsoft understands this perfectly. That's why their executives talk about engineering personality. They're not building memory as a cute add-on. They're shaping long-term adoption. Users engage more with assistants that feel consistent, that behave as if they recognize the person behind the keyboard. Trust builds, usage increases. Enterprises capture their ROI not from the AI's raw IQ, but from the fact it remembers you personally. Memory pushes Copilot beyond generic outputs into the realm of organizational alignment. In Excel, metrics tied to a specific role rise to the surface. In Word, the expected report template is assumed, not forgotten. In Outlook, the drafts resemble the organization's voice, not a bland computer tone. This is not cosmetic polish. It's the practical difference between a tool employees despise and one they quietly depend on. And let's be clear about the adoption stakes. Enterprises don't roll out AI assistants for entertainment value. They do it to capture efficiency at scale. If users find the tool irrelevant or burdensome, adoption flatlines. The investment collapses into shelfware. Memory is the deciding factor between a system that feels faceless and one that proves indispensable. Memory doesn't just increase convenience, it ensures Copilot is adopted rather than abandoned. Now, a note for the privacy-conscious viewer. Personalization is enabled in many regions by default. But, and this is critical, you have the option to turn it off entirely. Your preferences about what Copilot should remember or whether it should remember anything at all remain in your control. That toggle in settings ensures personalization is never a hidden imposition. It's a choice you make. Transparency is built into the architecture, not tacked on after scandals. So yes, memory matters more than you assumed. It isn't fluffy enhancement or decorative polish. It's the foundation that makes Copilot scalable, trusted, and actually efficient. Without it, you fight the same battles every day. With it, you transfer those instructions once and let them persist, both for your sanity and for the enterprise's appetite for measurable value. And once you grasp that core function, a final realization follows naturally. Memory is not recall and it's not vision. It is something altogether different, your deliberate, visible, and controllable layer of persistence. Conclusion time. Remember the architecture. Memory is intentionally opt-in and auditable. Recall is automatic device local screenshots, and vision is session-based analysis where text transcripts may persist. 3 tools, 3 different consent models. Confusing them guarantees you'll argue from the wrong set of assumptions. If this breakdown spared you from another sloppy LinkedIn rant, reciprocate, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let the updates arrive like scheduled patches. 0 effort on your part. Before you leave, run one final command. Ask Copilot, what do you know about me? Then, if the answer unnerves you, toggle personalization off at settings, account privacy. And since engagement is currency, post in the comments one example of what you'd actually want Copilot to remember. It's a more interesting conversation starter than the usual privacy panic.